Okay, we are dropping live on YouTube. We are live on TikTok, and we are about to drop in on the 10 stages of dating for men. Now, I've worked with a lot of men in this niche. I've had over 500 calls with men. I have a community of men that I train this information with. I've went through a massive transformation myself, and I've seen a pattern. And that pattern that I've seen is the same for every man. And you could actually, if you're a woman watching this too, you would actually benefit as well. I know I got some women watching on TikTok as well, but women will benefit from this live as well, because this journey is the exact stages that each man will go through. And one of the things that you'll benefit by listening to this and going through this information is, now when you see the roadmap kind of teed up, you've seen kind of what's to come, you kind of know the stages, right? So one of the things is when most guys kind of learn this information, they think they're, in their world, they think that they're the first person to learn this stuff. But in actuality, you're not the only guy that's gone through this. A lot of guys have gone through this journey and will go through this journey. So you're not alone. So the first thing I want you to know before we drop into the 10 stages of dating for men is that you're not alone. Okay. So the first thing, you're not unique. Your situation is to you unique, but it's not unique to everyone else. In fact, it's really quite normal. And after working with guys and taking about 500 coaching calls with men, I've come to understand the patterns. And by the way, it's kind of the way my brain works. Our brains, all of our brains actually work in patterns. This is kind of how our brains work, but specifically some brains look for patterns. And sometimes patterns that you're always looking for is not actually helpful. But in this case, when you start to take patterns, this is really powerful. And when you understand the power of these stages, what's going to start to happen is you're not going to be surprised by it. It's not going to just be like, oh, wow. What happens is it kind of gives you a roadmap of what you're looking for, right? And you can kind of identify where you are. Now, depending on your level of expertise and how much you know, it will depend on essentially where you are on this journey, okay? So today, what I'm going to be sharing is from complete beginner to the end of the dating cycle, where you will actually end up. And when you understand this journey, you'll see this cycle. And I remember the first place I learned this and understood this cycle was in Sri Lanka. So it's 2017, and I just left Las Vegas. I just had my Vipassana. I went to India, then I went to Sri Lanka, and I remember I went to this temple. And when I was in this temple, I remember seeing the life cycle. They show a life cycle, and they had statues of the life cycle. And I thought that was a great way to identify and show what we go through on this journey. And the same thing is true for when you go to dating. The dating has a life cycle. There's a cycle that you go through on dating. And the thing is just a quick backstory on me. I grew up short and I was fat, and I went through puberty late. I probably graduated high school, I think like 5'2" or 5'3". And somehow I stumbled into getting into a relationship during that time period. But honestly, at that time period, the girls never really liked me. They liked me as a friend, but I could never attract them. So then I got into a relationship. Then I had a pretty bad breakup. I think it was like when I was 21. And then I just went on a crazy binging, Chop says, Matthew, I bet she was chopped. Yeah, she was absolutely chopped. She felt bad. Yeah, for sure. But you know who was more chopped? Me, honestly. I think I took that breakup way worse than she did. And another thing that happened to me during that time period when I went and had the breakup with my ex was I realized I know nothing about women. And whatever that love thing that I was just in, that was so crazy. And that was so wild. We went on so much emotional ranges. I lost myself and it was chaotic. And I always felt like somewhat trapped at times. I was like, I need to understand this dating thing at a much deeper level. So then after that, I went through a deep downward spiral into alcohol, drugs, and basically lost myself. And that was the only way that I knew actually how to get into relationships or interactions with women, is because I had the ability to just get drunk, like most of us do. Most guys just stumble their way, caveman their way, hey, how's it going? Caveman their way through the interaction, while the whole time not reading cues, not understanding the social nuances, not reading her correctly, not being a space, not being a gentleman, all these types of things, because essentially they are numbing themselves down and they have the inability to essentially interact freely. So, and there's a reason for this, right? By the way, have you ever thought about this? Like, why do people drink, right? Why do they drink to interact? Why can't they just interact normally, right? Why is that? Have you ever thought about that? Why can't people just interact genuinely, authentically, from their heart? Why do we need alcohol in order for us to interact freely, or other substances like this, right? Well, there's a specific reason for that. And do you know where that comes from? Do you know where the anxiety actually comes from? Do you know what's happening? Do you know what's going on a scientific level? What's going on in our brain? What's going on in our body? And we have the inability to interact freely. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, and that's for another video, because today we're going to go over the 10 stages of dating for men. So I got sober and lost all ability to know how to interact, lost my complete ability to interact freely with women, and it just didn't go well. So I needed to learn. So I hired coaches, I studied, I read a lot of books, and I basically went to the Vegas Strip and learned. And I went out I went out basically like 7 days a week, and I learned this stuff really quickly. And then from there, that's where I started basically helping other guys through this. Now, I never really publicly shared my knowledge with people or with men. And so what I've been doing over the last about 1.5 to 2 years is I've been helping men behind the scenes. So I've been helping people. I've been helping a lot of people with social dynamics, social insecurities, social anxiety, and then also specializing in helping men with man-to-woman communication. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So we're going to start from absolute, complete beginner, and then we're going to move into the next stages, okay? So we're going to go from like a beginner, where let's say you absolutely know nothing, to end of life. This is the journey that we're going to talk about today. This is the life cycle that we're going to go on, and it's going to be very powerful. So, number one, the first stage to any sort of understanding about dating is the first stage to dating is you have to approach. Okay? You have to approach. And within that, what that means is you have to be out in the world. Okay? So you have to be out in the world. So when I say approaching, that can mean a bunch of different things, okay? When I mean approaching, what that first means is you have to go out into the world. You can't just hide in your little hole, all right? You have to hide in your little hole. And yeah, hey, what's going on, Bryce? I appreciate that. Yeah, Bryce says, you're writing mirrored, homie. Can't read. It looks wrong. Just want to let you know. Yes, I appreciate that, Bryce, brother. Thanks for looking out for me. Yeah, I got a new webcam, and it doesn't have the mirror function. So I'm going to get OBS software, and hopefully that will tune it up. But I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for looking out for me, man. That's helpful. Yeah. Anytime you hear, even if my mic's not on or anything like that, let me know. That always helps me out. I'll see, because once I drop in, I'm like in the pocket. So I don't know what you're hearing or what you're not hearing, but thank you, brother. I appreciate that. So coming back to the approach, that means you have to get out in the world. That means you have to actually put yourself out there. Okay. So there's two ways really to do that. You can put yourself out there by going in person, right? And now you're going to go to venues, you're going to go to different places and put yourself out there. And the second way is through online dating. Now, one of the things that I recommend guys do is not be over leveraged on one or the other. So if you want to set up your dating life, sometimes guys go too much online or too much offline. Now, personally, in my experience, I don't think you can go too much offline, actually. I think there's not enough offline these days, and people are way too much online. But ideally, you want to have a bit of both or a little bit less. And when I say online, okay, when I say online, I mean like you can use Tinder, Bumble, any of these types of ones, but also social media, okay? So maybe you're depending on your style, okay? So for me, I wanted to get very specific at a certain skill, okay? My skill that I wanted to do back when I was really doing this, let's say before I got into my spiritual understanding when I was in my pickup phase. I've learned a lot since then and went into some dark holes on this one. But the one thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to get really good at cold approach. So that means I didn't know the person previously, I meet them in public, and I go approach them. The reason for that is back then I had no social media and I didn't even really want a cell phone. I didn't want to even get girls' numbers that much. I just wanted to get really good at cold approach. This, if you understand this, this is a blue ocean, okay? Now, for those of you that don't know what that word is, this is a business term. But if you get good at this, this is called a blue ocean. What that means is there's basically no competition. You're not going to have any competition under this. But if you do cold approach in the day, that's the highest level of skill set that you can really get in this. Now, there's multiple different ways. If you're more of like an in-person or you're more of an online person, you want to leverage. I always say to guys, leverage what you're naturally best at. So for example, like my brother, he's actually naturally better at texting and being online. He had MySpace from a very young age. So he was really naturally better at that. I was naturally better at in-person, plus it matched my lifestyle. So that's very important to understand is you have to put yourself out in the world. I focused on cold approach. That means putting myself in the world. I had zero social media. I had zero texting. I didn't work on any of that. I just was like, let's meet, let's get it done. So that's why I went to Vegas, because in Vegas, there's a 2,000 person turnover rate every week. That means every week there's 200,000 more new people coming through. And then I stood right on the Vegas Strip, right in the second busiest intersection in North America, which was outside of Bally's. Actually, it's called. I think that's how you pronounce it, Bally's. There's been some time since I've been there, but I stood outside of Bally's, and 5,000 people a day go past you. So you get really good. You can get really good if you put yourself out there. So that's what I focused on. But for you, if you're at the very beginning, you're at the very beginning stages of this, you have to put yourself out in the world. So for some of you, putting yourself out in the world might be too difficult in terms of in person. So what you want to do maybe is put yourself out there through online. All right. So maybe set up a little profile. Maybe that's your way that you have to put yourself out there. But the first stage, and I have guys that work with me, and typically I work with what's called the hard cases. Okay, so I'm talking the very top hard cases. They've not been with many people. They may have never interacted with a woman before. They're extremely good on the computer, coding and all that type of stuff. Work for Amazon, Google, Facebook, all these types of guys. And awesome humans, fantastic humans. I love them to death. They're amazing. And they got to get themselves out there, right? So for some people, they're going to do online. For other people, they're going to meet in person. So the first stage to this, the very first stage, nothing's going to change unless you get yourself out in the world. So you have to put yourself out in the world. This is important to understand. You have to put yourself out in the world. That's the first stage to actually getting into the dating world. Now, for some of us, that's going to be a big deal. Okay, that right here, just getting yourself out into the world might be the biggest first step. This might be your biggest first step. This might be where your biggest transformation is. Now, for a lot of us, we're going to have a lot of anxiety at the beginning, all right? We're going to get into our head. We're not going to be able to put ourselves out there. It's going to be difficult, and we're going to have what's called all these stories coming up inside our mind. We're going to have all these reasons. It's going to feel like we got cement on our block. Our mind's going to go blank. We're going to overthink. We're going to be what's called, the main one is we're going to be completely stifled, but like a mute, like, hey. That's my first approach face. Hey, hey, how you doing? Right? What's going on is your brain's going into what's called the fight or flight mode. The amygdala, which is responsible for the fight or flight switch, you're going from your neocortex into your lizard brain. So we have a wizard brain and a lizard brain, right? The wizard brain is responsible for a thinking mind. The lizard brain is responsible for our emotional mind. And when we get in that fight or flight spot, that's why we're unable to think in that moment. Kind of like this right now, right? Like you want to train your brain to be able to think and think and think. Can you deliver a message and at the same time read messages that are up on the chat and keep your flow going, right? So Cam says, yo, Matthew, can I get a shout out? Love the shades. Absolutely. You can get a shout out on the shades. Plus, check these out. These are actually here to help deliver more value. It's been technically tested by scientists that if you wear blue blockers, you will deliver more value. It's actually been tested. So Cam, I appreciate that. Shout out for you, Cam. Yes, I absolutely can give a shout out for you with the blue blockers. So yeah, can you keep your train of thought while speaking, right? You need to test yourself. You need to have different variables. I'm testing right now. I actually live next to a train track, so I can hear a train about to come and it's about to get loud. I don't know if you're about to hear it, but you need to stress test yourself. And can you stay focused on where you're going? So the first one is what you got to do is you got to put yourself out in the world and you got to test that part of your brain to see if you can keep talking, even if you're in the stifled state, right? So that stifled state is coming because you're going into your lizard brain and you need to interact from your wizard brain. You need to be able to use that so that you can be able to read people. Right? One of the key fundamentals in order to understand man to woman communication is you have to be able to read the situation. So many guys interact basically blindfolded, right? This is how they're interacting in interactions. So you're completely missing cues. You have no idea how you're able to do this. And Nick says, dude, you're talking to one person. Yes, actually, this is what I do. And Nick, I don't know if I misunderstood you, but this is a speaking technique. The audience views you as one person. All right. So when you're talking to your audience, talk to them as one. Don't talk to them as a bunch of people. Talk to them as one because there's one viewer watching this right now. So what you want to do is you want to speak to one person at a time. So good job on that, Nick. Yes, you want to speak to one person at a time. Okay. Number 2, once you've gotten out the world, now you've gotten over that anxiety, okay? Now you've gotten over that approach anxiety. What you got to do is now you got to go to phase 2, which is conversation, okay? So now you've gotten yourself out in the world, but now you just need to start having conversations, all right? So now this is where guys want to know the famous, what's the perfect line, right? What is the perfect line? So one of the things you got to understand is in conversation, you got to break the ice, right? So breaking the ice is an important stage because now you put yourself out in the world. Now what you got to do is now you got to talk, right? You can't just go up and just stand there. By the way, if that happens, that's totally okay. We got training and things to way to get yourself over this. That's not what this training is here for. It's to map it out. But first, what you want to do is you want to break the ice, okay? So now the conversation's happening. Now you're having that interaction, and you need to now have that interaction back and forth, okay? This right here is generally, this stage from 1 to 2 is arguably the hardest part for a lot of guys, okay? This is where I see a lot of guys struggle is from 1 to 2. This is primarily where I do a lot of my work with a lot of the guys that I work with because they get stuck in their head. They don't know what to say. They get super nervous, totally normal, and they've had a fear of this their entire life. And now one of the things they got to do is they got to now go there and not run out of things to say. Right? And so one of the things you can do by watching me do this right now is I'm using a technique. Okay. Now I have a bit of prepared material, but you have seen me on other lives. The other thing I do is I just flip on the camera and just start talking. One of the techniques that I teach guys to do, and one of the techniques that you're going to want to learn if you want to learn man to woman communication, is you're going to want to learn how to free associative speak. You want to be able to learn how to talk and talk and talk and talk whenever you want. Okay. Now, A lot of guys, when they first come to me, they're using what's called their control muscles. Okay. When they first come to me, they come and they do their control muscles. Okay. But what we want to do, instead of using our control muscles, we want to use what's called our release muscles. So one of the ways to use your release muscles is, like, an example of using release muscles is improv. Okay, so improv is the way to use your release muscles. Okay, that's an example of it. I'm practicing this here. You notice how I'm delivering information, and sometimes I engage with people, sometimes I just deliver information, because I also record these for the recording as well. So you want to be able to use your release muscles. It's an important skill to know how to do in order for you to basically interact with women. So what happens is, a lot of guys have a lot of tension in their throat. They have either their throat chakra blocked, or they have a lot of tension in their jaw. They have a lot of tension in their mind, in their temples. And then when they speak to people, they're like this, and they start to interact like this. I'm over exaggerating, but this is how they interact with people. And now they're all stuck, and they are so serious, and they're so stiff, and they interact like this, and they're just forcing. When they speak, they're just constantly forcing, and there's just so much tension right here. And I remember when I first did my first speaking journey, this is how I used to speak on stage. Now, I'm over exaggerating, but I was so tense in my body. I was so tense in my jaw. And when I first interacted with women, this is how I used to talk, right? But what we want to do is allow the flow to come through. You want to allow yourself to flow. You want to allow the words to come through. You want to use your voice. You want to have vocal projection. You want to be able to boom. You want to have your voice be booming, right? And you want to be able to access these thoughts just on call. Okay. So I strongly believe show, don't tell, right? So a lot of what I'm doing in front of you as well is showing you how you can do it as well, right? So if you look at me, this is how my mentor actually trained me. This is how he trained me to understand this stuff, is you want to be able to speak and speak and speak and speak and speak, right? I have a bit of prepared notes, but they're really just not. This is what I have. Like, this is the preparation that I have. Now, this is a skill, right, that you got to cultivate over time. But over time in the conversation, you want to be able to what's called free associative speaking. Now, this is why the perfect line does not work, because you could say the perfect line, but how you say the perfect line could be all stiff and stifled. And now you're making her feel really awkward. Whereas if you're loose, you're using your release muscles, you're congruent, your energy's in alignment, you got good frame. Now you come into the interaction with a man to woman interaction, and now it just goes smoothly. And it doesn't really matter what you say. Okay, so you can have some fallbacks. I create some fallbacks, especially guys that are super stifled, that are super in their head and use control muscles. I have some fallbacks for them. Okay, I do give them some fallbacks just in case the energy drops, because this is one of the biggest fears in the interaction, is that when the interaction is going, it just has a big drop, right? But generally speaking, the first thing that you want to master is the first 0 to 5 minutes. This, if you can get past that window, that is a powerful window to get past. So this is the first real stage of breaking the ice, the conversation. And this is the kind of first threshold that you want to get back, because it's really important to essentially do this. And when you can do this and get past this first 5 minutes, really the interaction starts to go smooth from there. This right here is where the most people get challenged with, that first 5 minutes. And just so you're aware, not to put pressure on you, but this is how fast people make a judgment. 0.03 of a second. You got a snap judgment. You got a judgment. Our brain creates these judgments because it has to, in order for it to basically understand if there's danger in this environment. So when people make judgments, it's basically a survival mechanism in our brain in order for us to stay safe. So what we want to do is and what I teach guys is I teach them to master the first impression. That's what I essentially went to Vegas to do, is I want to master the first impression. And so if you can do that, it can become very powerful. And when you understand that concept, it can really transform your interactions, because if you can get that first impression, you're going to have a snap judgment in 0.03 of a second. And if you can hack that, like I'm hacking you right now with my look, right? You wear something funky, you put a little something on, it's going to cause attention. And then you're going to maybe make a judgment of me, but I want that. Like I want to have a little bit of a judgment of me. So the second phase is breaking the ice. Now, these two phases is where I'm spending the most amount of time, because it's generally where people struggle the most. It's generally where I imagine where guys struggle the most, is that first approach, put yourself out in the world, and then second, breaking the ice. Now from there, okay, let's say you finally got over that hurdle, you got over that first 5 minutes, now you're interacting, you're having a great interaction, okay? Call this the dip, okay? Contact dip, okay? This is what this is called, the contact dip. So now, once the interaction is going well, then there needs to be an exchange, okay? And that exchange is contact details, or texting, okay? So let me just share what this would look like online, okay? So the approach is like you've matched online, and now you've broken the ice, you've said you've connected, now you're entering the conversation, and now you're texting back and forth, okay? In simple terms, online. Online is pretty simple. It's just a pretty basic algorithm that just happens every single time. You two match, then you have an exchange back and forth, and you exchange contact details, okay? So maybe you move the conversation to WhatsApp, maybe you move the conversation to another platform, more messaging style, or maybe you have the conversation on the app for a bit, right? This is important. And this is important detail. So BBD said, Matthew, if you were an athletic, what sport do you think you would have to have played? Good question. I think I would be a polo player. Whatever the one, the polo player that is with a horse, I think I'd be a really good, I'm a short little guy. So like the jockey position would be really good. And then playing with the ball, I think that would be a really fun one. And then I'd love to ride. How's my form, by the way? Ride with the contact thing. I think that would be the sport. That's a really good question, BBD. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. So let's talk about in person though. Okay. So now you're having the conversation, and there is the contact dip. Okay. So in any interaction, there's going to be a spike of emotion, and it's probably going to come down. And then depending on how good you are at this, you can keep kind of bringing it up, bring it down, bringing it up. But for a lot of guys that first get started, they kind of end it here, okay? So there's a strategy that you can do in order to fix at the dip, okay? And this is what I call the contact dip. So let's say you're interacting with a woman, and you're having a good exchange. It's going back and forth. And then you feel like, the energy is like really good, but now it's starting to drop. So right as it's starting to drop, what you can do is you can do this. Hey, you seem like a cool person. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Do you have Instagram or WhatsApp? And you say it in that way, with those tone and that sequence. And then from there, when the conversation starts to dip, you exchange contact details. Okay. So now that you're exchanging contact details, now you give an option. Okay. And there's a specific reason why, and you can say phone number or WhatsApp or IG. When you do this, there's a specific reason why you ask for either one or the other. Okay. Unconsciously, if she gives you her number, that means there's a connection. Okay? When someone gives you your number right away, sometimes it puts women on the spot and makes them feel uncomfortable. So giving options is a great thing to do for women. Giving options is an awesome thing to do for women because it helps them make a choice so they don't feel like they're on pressure. All right. So I can remember this one time, I was asking this woman for her number, and she ended up giving me her number. And when she gave me her number, she had a boyfriend at the time. And when she had a boyfriend, I didn't know that at the time, and she gave me her contact details. And then all of a sudden, the owner of the gym was kind of being aggro with me, and I was kind of confused why he was being like a little bit aggro with me. And I found out that that was his girlfriend. They were kind of like seeing each other, all that type of stuff. And I heard from his business partner, like, "Hey, you got her number," and she was like upset. Or I was like, "Oh, that's why that guy's like that." And turns out the reason she gave the number is because I was just so confident in the way that I asked it. So asking for numbers, the way that you ask is very important, but you want to give options. So if a woman gives her number right away, that means there's some sort of connection that she wants to explore. She wants to have that deeper experience with you, because a number it feels a little bit closer to her. But if she gives you your Instagram, she's curious or not sold. Okay. But what's nice is based on her attraction level to you, you can know by asking for what details, but you give her an option. So if she gives you her number, you know, okay, there's probably a little bit more of a deeper connection. But if she gives you her social media, her IG, she wants to kind of get a feel for you. She wants to kind of get to know who you are, right? So ideally, you have a basic social media. Look, you don't have to go all fanatical and crazy about this, but ideally you just set up 9 tiles if it's Instagram or Facebook or something. Just get 9 tiles. That's all you need to do, just so they have a bit of a personality. And now you can start messaging each other back on social media. But this is a great thing to do, and I call it the contact dip. So when the energy starts to dip, that's where you ask for the contact details. Now in the exchange, you're asking for the contact details right there. And then when the energy dips, it's a perfect time to go, okay, you got each other's contact details. Great. Let's now separate, right? It's like, okay, awesome. I'll be in contact with you, right? So now that's how you navigate the dip. So when I talk about the exchange, what I'm saying here is there has to be some sort of exchange where you get each other's contact details, where now you can be in communication with each other in order to set up the dates, right? So then you go to the first dates, okay? And this is setting up logistics / planning, okay? So depending on the type of guy you are, I suggest not doing too much back and forth. Now, you know yourself best, and you got to understand, some guys and some girls love the back and forth, all this type of stuff. Generally, for me, especially if you're at the beginning of this journey, you don't want to be spending too much time texting back and forth and creating attraction and all this type of stuff through text, No. Okay. Every guy's got his own strategy, okay? And everybody's got their own strategy. The strategy, what I can help other people's strategies, I just share with my strategy first. I would rather have a lot of front end value when I go into the interaction, so I can just basically text and set up logistics, okay? So generally speaking, you should try to set up a date a little bit quicker than having to have like a bunch of back and forth, all right? Look, if there's a need for a bunch of back and forth, generally it's not much of a connection there. And you're going to spend a lot of time talking, and girls are being hit up by so many types of people and all this type of stuff. It's like, no, try to do it a little bit quicker. And then if it's too quick, it's rather, there's a key concept that I share with guys. It's called polarization. And what this does is you either want it to be a yes or a no. Okay? You want to make sure it's either a yes or a no, okay? One or the other. Now, either or, it's fine, okay? If it's a yes, great. If it's a no, even better. Like, no drama, no sweats, all good. Okay, here, let me share with you a concept called frame. I'm going to share with you the frame. Frame is essentially your mindset, how you see reality, okay? And the frame that we want to be in is that I'm loving my world. I love my vibe. I'm enjoying my vibe. You seem like a cool person. I'd love to exchange vibes together. Maybe that's where we can connect, okay? And you're sharing each other's vibes, all right? But if that's not, no worries. It's all good. And what we want to do is we want to polarize. So we want to either make it a yes or a no. Too many guys are afraid of polarizing, and that's why they end up in the friend zone. Okay? The reason they end up in the friend zone is because they're afraid to polarize. And this is what happens to nice guys. And so with nice guys, this is what's called the nice guy trap. This is why I encourage guys to get over this, okay? And this takes time, and this is why we have to work on your frame. When we work on your frame is your self-belief, your identity, and how secure you are inside yourself, and how able you are to let that part of yourself out into the world. And if you're able to let that part of yourself out into the world, then that's what's going to be attractive. And then from there, that's where you're going to attract women from an authentic place, which is why I call it authentic attraction. Look, by the way, what I teach what's called LTR, okay? I teach LTR, not STR, okay? I don't teach STR. This is not something I do, okay? LTR is long-term relationship strategy. So I teach men long-term relationship mating strategy. That means for guys that are wanting to get married, or for guys that are wanting to get into a long-term relationship, for guys that are already at that phase. I do understand STR, which is short-term relationship strategy, but that's a lot of based on techniques. It's a lot of based on performance. And that's why I don't really like it, because this is based on performance, okay? And this is kind of what you see out in the internet, okay? You see a lot of performance out on the internet. And I think there's a time and space for that. I don't knock it. I think you know yourself best. You know what works for you. If you're at that phase of your life, I was too, and I got burnt out by it. And then I was never attracting a woman from an authentic place because I was performing all this time. And then she fell in love, or she was attracted to the performance side of myself. And then as soon as I wanted to show up authentically, it's like she just completely started to change her behavior. And I'm like, inside my soul, I'm a genuinely nice guy. Like, I'm the classic nice guy. You know, I am that guy in my soul. I'm a nice guy. But what I realized is there's a difference between nice and kind. Okay. And I got very clear on the difference between being nice and kind. And there's a big difference between the two. Being nice is pandering. What that means is you're going, oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. Okay. No, I won't do it. I won't do it. Okay. Oh my God. Yes. I'll do everything. Oh, okay. Right. And that's the behavior. And that's kind of the energy in the relationship, right? Look, if you pander, you're basically going to get neutered. You're spiritually neutering yourself. All right. So that's not going to work. You need to have boundaries. You need to have decisions. You need to be assertive. You need to know where you're heading. And you want to be creating win-wins. You want to be creating interdependent, synergistic win-wins with her. This woman that you're going to get into a relationship with, hopefully eventually in a long-term relationship, is going to be your partner. So you want to be clear on that. You don't want to be in performance. You want to be authentic. You want to know that you're showing up as you are, who you are. And you're also willing to look at your blind spots and have, awareness is being shared with you. But this is really important, that you show up from your authentic self. So I teach LTR, which is long-term relationship mating strategies, which is really important to understand the differences. Okay. So now that you have approached her, now you're interacting with her, now you've exchanged contact details. Now what you have to do is now you have to set up logistics, right? Okay. Hey, are you free? Like, what does your schedule look like on Saturday? I'd love to take you out for coffee, right? Big. And like, by the way, I'm not going to get into like date strategy and all this type of stuff too deeply into it. But one of the biggest things is like, you don't need to spend much money. Okay. Like ideally $15 or less, right? Some guys are like breaking their bank account on dates, and then it's just going nowhere. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. You don't have to break your bank account here. It should be like $15 or less. You got to think, it's a casual hangout. It's a casual meetup. You two are just getting to know each other. You don't even know each other yet. You haven't even hung out, and now you're willing to spend like $100 and something on a stranger. Like, first of all, this isn't charity. And by the way, some of you are saying, Matthew, you haven't met women in Miami. And Matthew, you haven't met women in LA. You know what? I did live in those areas. And guess what? I didn't find many that were compatible. Because, and by the way, I did. And there's a lot of great women around the world. And I have a lot of respect for a lot of women around the world. And look, if you're having to break your bank account, what you're doing is you're over leveraging your strategy. Okay. If you're spending all this money up front, you haven't displayed value. And now what you're trying to do is up your value with your bank card. And I lived in Vegas for on and off for 2.5 years. You know how much money I spent on drinks? I still remember $22.50. I spent total $22.50. I bought one girl a drink and I was already with her. So I didn't need to do it to get with her. I bought one girl a drink and I said, never again. I'm not doing this. I got to learn something way different because I'm not spending all this money. By the way, I was broke at the time anyway, so I had to learn how to do it without money. And one of the things I realized was you don't need to break the bank account. Upfront value, work on your personality, work on your frame, work on your ability to conversate, learn the energetics of the interaction, study the women and how she operates, how she thinks, the micro nuances, the skills, all these types of things, that the understanding. Then from there, you're not going to have to face as much on the first date or in the logistics. So really at this stage of the journey, really is just setting up the date, setting up the logistics, going back and forth. Oh, you're free on Saturday. Okay, great. What about this coffee shop? Yep, that coffee shop works for me. Okay, great. I'll see you there at 2:00. Awesome. Boom. That's about as far as you need to take it. And then maybe the day of, hey, what's going on? Hope you're having a wonderful morning. Just confirming that we're still on for 2 p.m. Yep, still on. Okay, great. See you there. Boom. That's as far as what you really need to do. You don't have to do too much back and forth. Again, you know yourself best. So you decide if you want to do all that. Some of my guys, they like the back and forth. They like the banter. But believe me, from experience, it's pretty exhausting. But also if that's your deal online, then that's great. Fantastic. You know yourself best. Okay, great. Now that you are on the date and the date's going well, right? You're on the date. Now is where the sparks and attraction come in, okay? So now this is where the connection starts to come in, okay? And the connection is going to happen between a certain period of time, okay? So this connection and attraction is going to happen between the first 3 dates, okay? So this is where guys mess up, okay? There's two real like breaking points that a lot of guys mess up. And I call them gates. These are essentially gates that you have to go through, okay? The 2 gates that guys mess up the most is from gate 1 and gate 2. So from approaching and creating conversations, okay? That's really the first gate that they mess up. And then the next gate that they mess up is between 5 and 6, okay? So that's where they go on dates with women, but when they're on a date with a woman, they're not really creating any attraction. They're not really creating any chemistry. And the challenge is that now unconsciously, okay? If you want to understand women, understand them from an unconscious biological level. If you want to understand women, understand them from an unconscious biological level. So many of us are getting so fanatical, but we have to look at ourselves like a species. I want you to put on your Charles Darwins right now. Put on your Charles Darwin glasses, or put on your Sigmund Freud psychological paper writing. I want you to put on your Harvard hat, right? And just a side note here, if you think about it, Harvard studies animals mating. They go in the wild and study animals mating. They study them, but they don't have a curriculum about Homo sapiens mating. This is super weird, right? And I want you to think about that. Why do you have to listen to some guy on the internet about learning this stuff? Why can't you go read books about this? And you can, but why is it not from Harvard specialists? Why is it not from people that are in Harvard writing dissertations on this stuff, right? Well, they're not incentivized. This is actually not incentivized for them to teach this information. Yes. D-Water says the government. Yes. D-Water says money. Yes, exactly. They actually make more money out of us not knowing this stuff. So now you got to learn from some guy that got sober and went to Vegas to study this stuff from a deep level and learned it experientially and then quantified it, qualified it, and split tested it, learned from mentors. I've spent over $30,000 on this stuff, learning this information. Now you're getting it for free. Yup. Drop a 1 in the chat if you're stoked for getting this information for free right now. I dropped $30K. You know how much time and energy I went through? But you know what? I love you. I want to help you. I want to send you love. I want to send you good vibrations. I believe that you deserve everything you want in this life. You can make your dreams come true. You can have what you want. You have what it takes to be a winner, and you deserve all of what you're going for. And I believe in you. And that's why I love showing up here, because I love sharing that energy, because I believe in myself. I believe in my dreams. I believe in what I'm here for. And I believe in that. And I want to be a conduit for that. I want to be a conduit for that for you. So I'm sending you good vibrations, good energy. I believe you have what it takes. You're a winner. You can do it. You have everything it takes to do this. Okay. So between gate 5 and gate 6, this is where guys mess up. They have the inability to create a real attraction. And so what happens is, from an unconscious biological level, her body thinks you're a friend. Okay. Now, that's okay. That's okay that her body thinks you're a friend. You are just getting to know each other. Okay. But the challenge is if you feel like she's not a friend, right? If you're attracted to her, but she's not attracted to you because you haven't been able to generate attraction. Now, the challenge is unconsciously at a biological level. This is beyond the conscious mind, right? If you want to understand people, think of the unconscious mind. This is what Sigmund Freud talked about. Look into the unconscious mind. Don't look at what they're actually saying. Don't look at look at their actions. What are they unconsciously doing, right? Women will often say one thing and mean another. I'll give you an example. Look, woman comes home from work. Man is sitting watching TV and he is watching Netflix. Oh my God, watching Netflix. Yes, watching Netflix. And then woman comes home, right? And then she puts her stuff down. And then guy doesn't really acknowledge. So then she gets louder. She starts ruffling things around. And then guy still watches TV and just doesn't focus and does all this stuff. And then woman sits next to him and then she goes, and then he goes, hey, is what she says. Hey, really? And then what happens? How was your day? Fine. Right? It was fine. It's like, whoa, really? It was fine? Like, so dude, put down the remote, tune into your woman, and give her some presents. That's what she's looking for. And if you want to understand that at a much deeper level, I would highly encourage you to read the book, The Way of the Superior Man. He talks about this quite deeply. He talks about this very, very deeply, about how to understand a woman, how to be a space for her, how to be a space of presence, how to give her presence, the importance of giving her presence, and what that does to her spiritually, what that does to her biologically. And you want to give that space to her. But if you're on a first date, or you're between the first 3 dates, and you're not displaying cues of attraction, you're not knowing how to stimulate her at a biological attraction level, what's going to start happening at a biological level is she's unconsciously going to see you as a friend. So she's going to start treating you like a friend. She's going to start acting like a friend. And you haven't displayed and you haven't gone through the threshold of attraction. You haven't generated any attraction. And most likely a big part of that is because you are in the logical mind trap. Okay, so you're just speaking to her in a robot. And if I have any women in here, or if you're a guy watching this, maybe you can relate. Hey, how are you? How is your day going? What do you do for work? Oh, that's really nice. How is your family? What hobbies do you do? Right? It's like this robotic, stifled version, completely analytical, completely in our mind, no fun, no state, no excitement, no emotional range, no nothing, just very predictable. By the way, a lot of women also like that. They like a predictable guy too, right? But even a predictable guy, you got to be able to enter her world and stimulate attraction, right? So what a lot of guys do is they create no spark, no attraction. They get stuck in the 1 to 3 dates. And what starts to happen at an unconscious level is she sees you as a friend. And now all attraction's gone. There's no chemistry. And unfortunately, you're probably a great guy. You're probably a really good guy. You probably have a lot of great traits to you, but unfortunately, you haven't learned how to generate attraction. You haven't learned how to spark anything. And now she just sees you as a friend. And unfortunately, you get put into the friend zone, and now the spark goes. Now, look, I've been put in the friend zone multiple times. I mean, especially a lot at the beginning. Oh my God. And the reason why I got put into the friend zone is because I had a fear. I had a fear of polarizing. And I was stuck in the nice guy trap. So that means is I was constantly pandering and afraid to take social risks. Okay, so this is huge. This is something that you got to understand. A lot of us guys don't want to take social risks. Now, what I'm about to share with you right now is deep stuff. Okay, this is about to be real deep right here. Okay, we're about to go into the science lab right now. The reason why a lot of guys don't want to take social risks is not because the girl is too good looking. It's not because he's too intimidated by her. There's a mechanism in the brain that stops us from raising status. What the guy is, he's actually afraid of the other men in the tribe. Okay? Why is that? Because if a man raises status unconsciously in his brain, he's going to have to deal with the tribe. And generally speaking, back in the day, raising status means your biology is going to evolve. Okay? Your biology is going to supersede the other biology. And the other biology doesn't want you to supersede, right? You see this in herds, right? You see this with walruses, you see this with lions, all this type of stuff. What happens is they compete with each other, right? Because essentially the strongest want to survive, right? They want to survive. So you have to get past the social risks. Okay. So the reason why your brain is getting stifled is because it's not because you don't know what to do. It's not because she's too hot. It's actually, there's a mechanism in your brain that's stopping you wanting to raise status. So taking social risks is intimidating and scary. So you don't do it. You don't take social risks. You play it safe. And by the way, what I'm doing right now is taking a social risk. And I love what Rasti said, quit yapping. Well, just a heads up, Rasti, if I'm not yapping, who's going to be talking? Right? Who's going to be talking here on this one? You're just going to be watching a guy not saying anything, right? Who's going to be talking? This is good though. So just so you're aware, for any guys that are watching right now, I'm doing something specifically, okay? If you actually watch back 2 seconds or 3 seconds, if you're watching this on replay, I would encourage you to go to back. You'll see me lose my train of thought in one moment. Rasti got into my frame for a second, okay? Rasti actually got into my frame and he said, quit yapping, because I'm testing my brain, how I can do lives while having people test your frame. Being live right now while delivering information with really not much notes, doing free associative speaking, is actually quite difficult. And then you've got all the lights on you, you've got people jumping in, jumping out, saying different things. You got to keep your mind on track. And this is something I'm learning as well, but you want people to test your frame. So I want to open myself up to the trolls. I'm probably calling that in now, but I want to actually have my frame tested. I want to see how well I can deliver information, but also have my frame tested. And you actually saw just a moment ago, Rasti actually got into my frame, but then I got it back. Because now what I do is I Qigong it, I receive it, I make a joke, and then I can address it. But I don't have to address it either. I didn't have to do that. But this is something I actually want to work on. I want to work on my ability to receive people testing my frame on the internet, because this is actually really vulnerable. Just a heads up, what I'm doing right now, there's very few people on the internet that know how to do this. There's really few people on the internet that know how to do this. And the reason for that right now in society in 2025 is we're very sanitized. We're very bubble wrapped. And so we're very afraid to speak our truth, myself included. That's why I'm doing this. I'm literally growing before your eyes. And we want to, it's more pressure than ever to share ourselves authentically. But Are you just going to play small your whole entire life? Like, is that the game plan? So I'm going through an evolution, and I want to show, not tell. I want to lead by example. I want you to see how you can talk and talk and talk. I want to show you that how you can jump on live and have people test your frame. I want you to see my frame tested and watch how I get it back, right? How do I get back into my world? Rasti's trying to get into my world. How do I get back into my world? How do I remember about the audience? How do I keep delivering value? How do I have people try to penetrate my world and then just stay focused, right? So there's a lot going on here than just some guy standing talking. So thank you, Rasti. Now I incorporate that into the training, which is awesome. So coming back, you have to be able to do this. By the way, that what I just showed you, you have to be able to do this with women. Women are going to test your frame. They're going to test your frame all the time, and welcome it. Welcome women testing your frame. You want that. This is what's called shit tests, okay? Women are going to constantly test you to see how strong your frame is, which is fantastic. And when you have a strong frame, that's when you can build sparks and attraction. So chemistry is very important. Next, once you create chemistry, the next gate you have to go through is what's called connection. And here is where you're going to start building trust, okay? And this is going to happen between the first 2 to 4 dates, okay? That's where this is going to happen, okay? So now that you've created a spark, you've created attraction, one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to be able to build trust, okay? You can't go anywhere. One of the core needs of a woman, when we talk about it from a biological, evolutionary standpoint, she needs to feel safe. And if you're wanting to spike her to an orgasm, you're going to have to the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure she feels safe. She ain't going nowhere without feeling safe. Okay. So guys, this is a huge thing you're going to want to understand is how to build safety with a woman, how to make her feel safe, how to make her feel comfortable. This is very important that you understand this skill set because you ain't going to get nowhere without trust. And a lot of how you hold yourself, how your vocal projection is, can you project your voice? Does your voice just come out? Hey, like, does it just come out freely? Are you able to just speak and you're using your release muscles? Are words just able to just come to you? Are you relaxed? Can you smile? Can you be loose? Can you be dense? Can you flow, right? This is a little bit of feminine energy right now. You see that feminine energy? Can you see that? Come on. Come on. Yeah, you see that. Right? Can we go backward? Oh, yeah. Oh, should we go forward? Can you go forward? Right? Can you be loose? Right? Or do you take yourself so seriously? You get stifled, right? Stuck in your head. By the way, if this happens to you, no worries. But you want to be loose. You want to be able to have range with yourself. Now, I'm more feminine, okay? So my style is a little bit more feminine, okay? So for some guys, this is absolutely not going to work and it's not for them. Okay, you have to honor your authentic self. Your authentic self might not be like that. What's important is you honor your authentic self. I'm a loose cat. Okay, I'm a bit of a loose goose. That's who I am. That's my authentic self. So you want to be able to build trust. And how you build trust is through safety, okay? And so now you're starting to connect with her. You're starting to take 2 or 3 dates. You've been able to polarize and you've been able to create attraction. She loves your authentic self. Okay, she's so attracted to your authentic self that your authentic selves come out. Now you've built safety. Now trust is established. Now this is where things are going to get spicy. All right, type in the chat spicy if you're ready to go to the spicy level. Is anyone here ready to go to the spicy level? Moody says, I found my girlfriend in the most cringe way imaginable and beyond shocked at work. Hey, Moody, 10 out of 10, man. That's awesome, bro. I'm glad that you found her in that way. That's awesome. You know, there's no one way to do this. Love happens in multiple different ways. And hopefully that's what we're here for, is we're helping you attract a woman from an authentic place. So type in the word spicy if you're ready for the spicy level. The spicy level is here. Okay. Now you're at the spicy level. And at the spicy level is you're defining exclusivity. Okay? So now you're getting to the level of what are we? right? And this happens generally between the 6 to 10 dates, okay? So rule of thumb, guys, rule of thumb, and women, you probably know what I'm talking about if you're in the room here. You got to know most of the time women are talking to other guys, okay? You are not the only guy they're talking to. And don't worry, if you were a woman, guys, you'd be doing the same thing. And some of you guys are doing this anyways. But if you're a woman, you want to talk, you want to see your options. This is part of her biology. She wants to mate with the best match guy that she can possibly do so that her genetics will go onwards. Think about this from a mating strategy standpoint, right? If she mates with a guy that's got resources, talking about caveman time, cavewoman time, if she mates with a guy or a man back in the day who has resources, that has status in the tribe, that has the ability to talk and create great states around, goes out hunting, can get food. If she mates with that guy, what do you think her children are going to be like? Like that guy. So it's incentivized in her DNA, in our biology, to mate with a guy that has status. And she's going to want that. So when you get to the 6 to 10 date level, you now want to start having that exclusivity conversation. Hey, what are we? Right? Are you talking to anyone else? That's okay, but I'm just wondering kind of what this is. I feel like I want to kind of be exclusive with you. I'd love to have you as my girlfriend. You know, and by the way, just a heads up, my girlfriend, now wife, she did have that conversation with me. So my girlfriend at the time, she asked me out. She said, hey, I'm not okay with just kind of being back and forth. Like either we're in or like we're not doing this. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is great. Like it was perfect timing for me on my journey. But yeah, she asked me out, right? But that conversation needs to be had probably between the 6 to 10 dates. And that's the spicy level, okay? Now, there's something very important that you need to understand about this level, okay? And actually, no, it's at this level here where we're going to the next gate. We're going to the next gate right now, which is now that you have had that conversation, you're going to move to the next gate, which is the commitment. And at this gate is where the long-term relationship starts. Okay? And there's a key stage that you got to know this. If you don't know this information, I promise you, out of everything I said today, if you get this one piece, this is going to help the most. So in the first 6 months, there's a stage that happens, and there's a chemical that gets released, okay? There's a chemical in the brain that gets released when you are in the first 6 months of a relationship. So there's this kind of key statement to understand. You don't start dating till after 6 months. You and your partner do not start dating until after 6 months. You don't actually date the person until after 6 months. The reason for that is basically in the first 6 months, all you're doing is sharing a lot of oxytocin, the love drug, right? The feel-good drug. So you're basically getting high off each other. You're literally giving each other a drug. And that's why, generally speaking, at the end of 6 months, most people start to have their first, argument, or in the first 4 months, they have their first argument. They're like, oh, things were going so good. What happened? It's like, well, yeah, things were going good because you guys are getting high off each other. You weren't actually dating yet. You actually didn't have a relationship. It actually didn't start yet because you were basically exchanging drugs off each other. So you've got to understand, when you first get into a relationship, at the first 6 months, essentially you're not dating yet. Okay. You're basically just sharing drugs with each other and you're exchanging. Now, in that first 6 months, this is where you're establishing the connection. Okay. And then once you get past that first 6 months and you start dating, you officially start dating, From there, that is where the relationship begins. Okay. So the relationship actually begins after the first 6 months. From there, this is where it starts to get different. Okay. This is going to be case by case now. All right. From that stage, now that you've got off high, and I want you to consider this key statement. You ever think about it? It's like they fall in love. It's a fall, right? Fall in love. Why does it not grow into love? Well, the reason people fall into love is they lose their identity. They start to be codependent on each other, or they be very independent. They're at each other's necks. And now they're basically codependent. They can't exist without each other. And it's really toxic and not healthy. And then when it gets to the unhealthy point, they have what's called an RAS flip. The RAS flip is what's called the reticular activating system. That's for selective focus. I'm just going to drop this knowledge right now, and you're going to have to go do your own research on this one. I can't slow this one down. You're going to have an RAS flip, and basically what starts to happen is you start to focus on all the things that they're not doing well. Where at the beginning of the relationship, your RAS was focused on all the good things about them, and you ever heard of the saying that the woman you marry is not the same woman you divorce, or the man you marry is not the same man you divorce, is because you've had an RAS flip. So I always thought this was confusing. Like, how can you go from loving each other and enjoying each other to then all of a sudden just next, have the worst energy towards each other, hate each other? It's like, well, because we actually have a flip in our brain and we choose, and our selective focus actually shifts. So from there, if we get past the 6 months, then from there, we basically go into actually starting to date each other. Now, this is where communication is so important. Okay. This is the foundation of your relationship. If you do not have communication, you do not have a relationship. And this is why all relationships, in my opinion, break down, because they haven't learned communication. Women haven't learned women to man communication. Men haven't learned man to woman communication. So their relationship breaks down. And I've seen this across the board. There's times where so many relationships could be saved if they just learned communication, right? If they just were to learn communication, they could have saved their relationship. And I've seen it so many times where people in relationships are talking to each other. I'm like, oh, she means this. And oh, he means this. And oh, they're not actually meeting each other, and they're pretty far off. So how do you get on the same page? And because women speak different languages than men. And a good book for this, it's a little outdated, okay? This is written back in the day, a little outdated, but it's a good entry. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And it feels like that at times for me. I'm like, I can go to Venus and I can go to Mars, and what I try to do is I try to take men to Venus, and I sometimes try to take, I used to work with women too. I used to work with just women clients. I try to take women to Mars, because that's another world too, right? I'm talking about kind of the guys right now, but there's a woman world in all of this too. And I believe strongly that all of us, both parties, should learn how each other operates, should learn how each other think, understand each other's anatomy, understand each other's biology, understand each other's how their brain's wired. Like, take time to study this stuff. It's going to completely change your life. Look, relationships are the foundation of human existence, right? You really think about it. Like, relationships are very important. Not just intimate ones like friendships, and if you're at work with employees or your friends or your colleagues, all these types of things, all of it's based down on relationships. So relationships are very important, and take the time to study the opposite sex, even if you're not interested in them, even if that's not your sexual preference. Like, it's still advantageous to take time to learn the other person. Liam McNara says, Matthew, can I get a shout out? My name is Liam. Liam, what is going on? Welcome to the chat. Thank you for the shout out. Thank you for saying that. Liam, I am sending you good energy. I hope you have a great, fantastic day. I hope your dreams come true. You deserve it. You have what it takes. You are a winner. Let's go, Liam. Love it, brother or woman, whatever you are. I think Liam's a man's name. I don't know, but that's awesome. So coming back to this, your relationship basically doesn't start until after 6 months. Then from there, communication will either break down or it'll strengthen. Then from there, this is where it kind of gets vague. Okay. So now you may get into a relationship. You may get married within the first year. You might get married in the first 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Some people, my buddy just got married. Shout out to my buddy. And he got married after 8 years of being with a woman. So then once you get married, this is where you get into this phase. Family. Okay. So now you're going to move into parenthood, or you're going to go into shared growth. Okay. And this is important. And this ties to communication as well. This is very important. This ties to communication. Ideally, if you're a man watching this, again, one of the things, read the book, The Way of the Superior Man, has a lot of great knowledge on this, but know who you are, know your purpose, know where you're going, know your vision. I'm right now on my wall, right across from this live, I'm looking at my vision. I have my vision board directly across from me right now. It's a line of sight. It's very clear. It's something that I've been working towards, and my partner has known that from the moment she's met me. I've parked the vision because it's a pretty vast vision, so I've had to come a little bit far away from it, but I've never lost sight of it. I've just kind of parked it from times, but know where you're going, know where you're heading, and then share that with your woman and build her into your vision. It's very important that if you're a man, build your woman into your vision. That means build her into the family. That means your personal family, like the ones of your mom, your dad, brother, sister, uncles, that type of stuff. But then also, if you want to build a family yourself, right? Build her into that vision. Have that depth of vision. You want to hold that vision with each other. And if that's not your lane, if marriage is not your thing, or if children is not your thing, at least build a shared vision to each other, right? What do you want out of this lifetime? What kind of person do you want to become? What are the things you like? What are the things you don't like? What are your non-negotiables? What are your boundaries? And by the way, you're not going to know those sometimes right away. You're not going to know those boundaries until your boundaries get crossed. Then you're like, oh, that's a boundary of mine. Or, oh, I've been compromising myself and I didn't know that, right? So the goal at this phase, okay, this is very important. At this phase, you want to be creating what's called win-wins, okay? And every time it should be, ideally, if you do this right, you want to be creating win-wins with your partner. And if you do this right, you want to be going between 60 to 40, okay? So that means sometimes I'm 60, she's 40. Sometimes she's 40, I'm 60, or vice versa. She's 60, I'm 40. Or maybe sometimes I'm 45, she's 55, or sometimes we're 50-50. But in terms of compromising, in terms of our life, when things get stressful, when things get tight, when things are unsure, it should never feel like a 70-30. It should never feel like an 80-20. If that is happening, that's a red flag that you need to be having a conversation. You need to be having a conversation with your partner. If that's not happening, you're going to have a breakdown in your relationship. And by the way, heads up, newsflash, whether it's with this person now or the next person later, you ever see that? Seems like the person's dating the same person, but yet they're just changing kind of body styles, but it's the same sort of relationship over and over again. Hang on a sec. You're going to have to take responsibility, and you're going to have to start working on your relationship. And most importantly, you're going to have to work on your communication skills, because communication is the bridge to the soul, right? If you cannot articulate yourself to your partner, there's going to be no connection. And if there is a connection, it will be janky. Okay, it's going to be kind of that. If you don't, and what you want to try to do is try to merge the connection together, and you do that through communication. So I'd highly encourage you to understand man to woman communication, woman to man communication, understand a woman's needs, understand a man's needs, and then find ways to create win-wins synergistically and make sure you're heading in the same direction. So a lot of times, sometimes you're not going to be on the same page. Sometimes with your partner, you are just not going to be on the same page, and that's okay. That's normal. That's part of a relationship. But the key is, when you're not on the same page, how do you get back on the same page? So often, guys, this is some advanced stuff. I can't teach this too deeply, but guys, it's your role to lead this one. And just like salsa, it's the man's job to lead, and he's the worst dancer. Just like communication, generally, man, you're worse at communicating, and you're the one that's supposed to be leading. And unfortunately, you've not been taught this. You've not had a model, just like I haven't. And you're going to have to learn this for yourself, or you can hire a coach, right? You hire a coach, you go to some of the courses. I've got a course, by the way. If you want to take my course, that's the first stage to do this stuff, to understand. There's tons of books. This is a great book. Models. This is a really great book. The other one is really good. Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus. That's an awesome one. There's tons of different books. There's a lot of resources out there, but I would highly encourage you to learn this stuff on your own, and also to what degree. But I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to save yourself a lot of headaches if you can get on the same page. So you want to create win-wins, and you don't want it to swing beyond 60-40. This is important, okay? This is very important. So now that you have a family, hopefully you have a family if that's what you're wanting in this lifetime. And now that you have a family, now the last stage, and this is the final gate, is legacy. Okay? So this is where you enter your wisdom phase. And you are a grandparent. Okay? So you're in your legacy phase. So this is the final frontier. This is the final cycle from start to finish. This is where you finally close the gap of the circle of life, right? You started from the start and you ended up here, right? A little Drake verse right there. I know you start from the bottom, now you're here. Really, it's a full circle. So here's the full circle. You end at the legacy phase, and now you're in the wisdom phase, okay? This is generally, you're probably going to be 55 plus. And now, in this time of the cycle, you share your wisdom, okay? So you've gone through your life cycle. Your life force energy is starting to leave your body. You're starting to slowly deteriorate. I know, but it's a beautiful thing. Welcome to life. This is what it is. Probably should look at truths as they are, not try to avoid them. We try to slow down the aging process. That's great. I think you should live old, die young, and try to take care of yourself as much as possible, but also understand that you entered this game of entropy, and things are going to collapse and compose, and you will go back into the earth just like you came from this earth, and you will sail into the sunset, wherever that is after this place. But when you're in that final cycle in the legacy style, this is where you share your wisdom, right? You share it with your grandchildren. You share your findings, your understandings. You share your wisdom, your life's reflections. This is where you share this with your children and your grandchildren. Your children will come to you. So here is the full cycle from complete beginner to absolute grandparent, right? This is the full steps. So we started off with approaching, right? You need to get out in the world. If you're not getting out in the world, you're not going to be able to find anyone. You're not going to be able to connect. So that means you either got to go out through online or in person, okay? You have to put yourself out into the world. If you're not going to put yourself out, how can anyone come in? So that's the first stage. You got to get past that, past the one. Next is generally the hardest gate to get past, okay? Fine, okay, I put myself in the world, but oh my God, now what the heck do I say to someone? Or I don't know how to message, right? Now you got to start having conversations, right? And you have to get past that first 0 to 5 minutes. Really, that's the key sweet spot. If you can get past that first 0 to 5 minutes, that's where a lot of transformation is going to happen. Now, once you've got past that first 5 minutes, or let's say you're online dating, now you need to start the texting. You need to share contact details. So if you're in person and you got past that conversation, that 0 to 5 minutes part, and there's a bit of a connection established, now you're going to exchange contact details, right? You want to have a little bit of a back and forth. This is where you're going to have texting. And then from there, you need to set up the first date. So whether you're setting up logistics through online, right, through Tinder or whatever that is, or if you've moved the conversation to WhatsApp, or if you got each other's contact details based upon meeting each other online, now you're setting up that first date. Next, now you're setting up the first date. Now you got to build that chemistry. You got to learn how to build attraction. You have to learn how to generate attraction. So from there, you get that first 1 to 3 dates, and you start building that chemistry, right? And that's where the chemistry starts to come in. Once you have that chemistry, now we can start building trust, right? And this gate from like the attraction gate is the second gate that I see most guys mess up. This is the one that they have the two challenges, the conversation gate and the chemistry gate. And if you don't get the chemistry date part right, you're going to end up in the friend zone. Okay. She's going to see you as a friend. So what we want to do is we want to go beyond that and set up the attraction. And then once we start building attraction, what we do is we start building trust. And the way that we start building trust is through safety. And now she starts to feel safe with us. She's starting to connect with us. She's starting to feel comfortable. And now trust is being established. And this generally happens between the first 2 to 4 dates. Boom. Now you got the trust going. Now you want to move into the relationship. Okay. And defining the relationship. Hey, if you're a woman, you're probably talking to multiple guys. If you're a guy and you're first getting started, she might be the first one you're talking to. That's okay. But now you got to know, guys, that she's talking to multiple guys, and that's totally okay because she's seeing her options. She wants to be exclusive. Most women do. Most women want to be exclusive. And by the way, if women don't want to, that's awesome too. Like, hey, we live in a free era right now. So do your thing, right? Like, you know yourself best. But in my experience, how I've experienced women, they would, if they were to find a guy that they like, they want to be exclusive. So then you find and you have that conversation that happens between the 6 to 10 dates. You have that exclusivity type of style of communication, and you start having that exchange. Hey, what are we? What is this? And then from there, you get into the commitment phase, right? So now you're getting committed, and that commitment happens in the first 6 months. And you know that you're not really starting to date in that first 6 months because you're having a lot of oxytocin exchange. You're doing a lot of the love drugs. So you're not actually dating yet. And then you're having that exchange, and then the relationship doesn't really start till after 6 months. That's where all the stuff starts to come up. That's where all the challenges. So this is where you're going to work on your communication. Then from there, now you're like, oh my God, we love each other. This is awesome. So then from there, you're going to want to have that move into that phase of like, maybe the 2 to 4 to 5, whatever, depends on what's right for you. Maybe 8, maybe never. You move into the parenthood or getting married or, creating a vision together. Maybe you start sharing bank accounts, all these types of things. You're going to move into that shared growth. And that's a whole entire journey in itself. And then the final gate, once you've gone through all that, you had children and you've had a wonderful life. Now your children have children and you become a grandparent and you share your legacy. You start to share your wisdom and your ancestors are around and you become an ancestor yourself, maybe once you pass on. And this is where you share your wisdom. So this is the full cycle from complete beginner towards the end of the 10 stages that you will go through in your dating life. So this is very, very powerful. If you have any questions, put them in the chat now. And this is something that I see primarily. I work with guys generally from 1 to 5. That's generally where I help guys the most, is from stages 1 to 5. This is where I help them the most. But obviously, I have a lot of experience down here as well. But my clientele, generally, I work with guys that are complete beginners that have absolutely no clue. Maybe they've been coders their whole life. Maybe they've been introverted. Maybe they didn't have a role model. Maybe they had a rough childhood, whatever that is. That's generally who I work with. I really like to help those guys. A lot of those guys are amazing humans. And unfortunately, because they just don't have social skills, they never get a chance to be seen as they really are. And unfortunately, because they don't have attraction cues, women just don't really give them the time of day. And unfortunately, these guys would make epic fathers, epic husbands. But unfortunately, they just can't get that display going, and they can't build that attraction because they don't really have attractive behavior. And then from there, they're just basically not attractive. So these are the guys I like to help. They're like the hardest cases, but they're my favorite cases because, man, when they send me that picture of them and their partner, or in the relationship, or they're getting excited for their first date, or maybe they've dated a couple people before, and they get to be able to do that. Like that's such rewarding work. And then ideally what happens is, they start to become fathers themselves. And now they can be what they didn't have. They can be the model for whoever they didn't have, right? And this could be very powerful. So if you got a question, drop in the chat. Bryce says, oh yeah, I'm a pro with that software from when I was streaming. It's hard to get the tech stuff going. Sounds good and looks good. Okay, that's good. That's good feedback. Yeah, I got to get the tech. I got to get the tech go. And then, yeah, your video is inverted. Yeah, so that's my next stage. When I do these lives right now, I was too late behind, but I just got these new mics as well, which are awesome. The Hollyland mics, they clip right here like this, which is awesome. And I wanted to use this for the stream, but a little behind. And then I set up the link wrong too, which is awesome. And I'm just testing myself, right? So I'm going live basically, 1 to 3 times a week. And I love it because it tests my ability to communicate. One of the things that I'm noticing as well by training this, you don't see, I don't know. I can't make an assumption because I'm not really on the internet. It was just kind of weird, but I know I do this as a business, but I make strategic partnerships where I don't really need to be on the internet and have generate through my own views, which is great. But also I want to learn how to do that. But I don't think many people do this. I don't think many people just jump on and start talking and then deliver information. I don't know. I could be wrong. If you're watching this on replay or if you're live right now, I'd love to see other people that do this. It'd probably be helpful. So let me know. And if you're in the chat, let me know if you got any questions. I'm happy to answer. But this is the 10 cycles or the 10 gates essentially every person or man will go through on their dating journey, which is an important journey to really understand and go through. And once you understand how these gates happen and where they are, it makes the dating game a lot more easier to work with. So that's the end of this live here. Drop your comments below. I'm going to close down YouTube. Take care. I'll see you on the next one.